We're here today to have a dialogue about movement strategy, talk about some matters of common interest that maybe will interest you.
Well, we've been trying to plan this for 6 months, haven't we? So we've finally done it. It's going to be non-linear. It's not, and there's a number of, flesh this out a little bit more. There's a number of reasons for this. The most obvious reason is it's not superficial. We've left the period of history where this can trundle along in a fairly, small way. We have to reduce carbon emissions. It's going to be a complete transformation. Everyone knows that. I mean, in Insulate Britain, it was funny because, to be honest, I don't know much about insulation. I'm a mobilisation guy, right? So, I thought, insulate. You always have this idea, don't you? Oh, we're going to do this change, and then you actually talk to the guy on the ground, who, the engineer, the frontline guy, the transport manager, and he tells you it's completely off the scale what has to happen. And I remember, talking to this guy, and he said, if you want to insulate, you've got to, I forgot what he said now, he said...
You've got to train loads of people.
You've got to train loads of people, you've got to change the culture of the builders because they're pissed off because they haven't got much money, you've got to train people, where's the trainers going to come from, where's the money going to come from 29 million homes, where's the raw materials going to come from because there's loads of international competition. Basically we need £600 billion to do this. The government's committed 1.5. This is World War II on steroids, right? It's fun. It's massive. And again, this isn't a rhetorical. This is physics, right? There's houses. You've got to insulate them. They cost time. You can't create labour out of nothing. There's only so many people in the country. That's an objective fact. If 3 million of them are doing houses, that means 2.5 million people are going to have to stop doing what else they're going to do. There's not some magic tree here. So that I can't see any other way that there has to be this big, I know it's an unpopular word, but revolutionary change, right? In how, and it's got to be thrust through by this civil resistance methodology, which is the right fit for this extremity, right? And the other thing is a lot of this. I want to take you up a little bit on this, but you wrote the book. What's it called? This civilization is finished, right? And we both, I think what most people think by that is we've got to change the economy, we've got to change, the politics. But for me, what it means more fundamentally is we have to change the way we see the individual, the way we have to. We've been brought up in this cult of neoliberal possessive individualism, which all the social science contradicts. People are not happier when they get more money. People are not happy when they make individual decisions. People aren't happy when they look after number one. People are happier when they're in loving relationships, in stable communities, with a culture that's coherent. And
doing meaningful stuff.
We all know this, right? This is not green propaganda. It's solid social science, right? And so if we try and produce a theory of change, which is based upon individuals in small groups, that's not how it's going to work. To my mind, what we've got to see is society as an entity in itself. It's like the individual is an abstraction as much as society for me. It's like, what's the individual? Okay, you're physically there, but what does that mean? The fact of the matter is you're enormously influenced all the time by people around you emotionally. Do they like you? Don't they like you? Am I doing something meaningful? Do I fit in? Drum bum bum.
And also air going in and out of my lungs.
Exactly. Right? We've got all these bugs in our stomach. I mean, it's a nonsense. It's a construction, right? Which isn't to say it's totally dysfunctional. Yes, it's got its usefulness, but it's totally overplayed in the way we construct our reality. And what we have to revert to, as it were, and rediscover, which is, the traditional way of looking upon social reality, indigenous peoples, traditional societies, but also, before 1989, dare I say it, most people had the idea that there is a society, and the society actually has a real entity, and that society basically recreates itself through herding dynamics, want of a better word. In other words, at some point, everyone is going to decide there has to be fundamental change. Not everyone, 80%, let's say. And there'll be this big change. And then all the workplaces will be changing within 6 months. And this is the World War II analogy, of course. It's slightly, it's one iteration of it. But I'll just finish by just giving this, this interesting historical point of whenever it was, 1939, right? The British public was utterly opposed to war for very understandable reasons, because they just had World War One, right? They weren't being cowardly. They, who wants to go to war again? And they were in this, wishful thinking. In retrospect, we can say this wishful thinking phase that Hitler was going to be. He's just a nationalist. He's a bit of a clown. Blah, blah, blah. A bit like what people think about Trump, right? It's like, he's all right, it's passing phase. No, right? This guy is a psychopath, right? And you have these crises where, he unites with Austria, well, fair enough, it's German, and then he takes part of Czechoslovakia, well, that's a German part. And he's just trying to reunite the German people. And then suddenly he invades the Czech Republic. And within the space of 2 weeks, the whole psyche of British society flips from wishful appeasement to, okay, we're going to have to go to war. We can't, a line has been crossed in the sand, as it were. And everyone knew then, what this guy was dealing with.
Is there going to be that equivalent of a line, Roger? You see, that's what I'm sceptical of. Again, I hope you're right. But what I see is much more likely is that I agree with you totally as well, that society is as much and as little a construct as the individual. But what I see when I look at our society is something which is massive, absolutely vast, way beyond a human scale, quite dysfunctional, quite riven. And what I see as likely in a situation where we've kept on thinking that there were lines in the sand. Many of us thought Katrina was a line in the sand, COP26 and so on. And when each of these lines gets crossed, there's a bit more of a consciousness shift, and there's a few more people who come our way and so on. But is there going to be this kind of Czechoslovakia moment? What I think is more likely is that we get more of these people coming. The climate movement is definitely going to grow during the 20s, probably exponentially, as things, tragically continue to spiral downwards, the weather continues to go out of control. Where are those people going to go? I think some of them are going to come and join, Just Stop Oil or whatever. I think a lot of them, if that's all that they see, as it were, as a viable option, they're not going to go there. And some of them may indeed go, therefore, to some quite unpleasant places, like towards eco-fascism. What we want, one of the crucial things we need to do, maybe we'll come in a minute to the question of, how do we get relatively conservative people potentially on board? How do we get people who are not woke on board? One of the things that crucially seems to me we need to do is to appeal to people in a slightly more bottom-up way, which is not individualistic and not just about small groups, but is about meeting people in a certain important sense where they are. And where are people? I think people are mostly in two real places. They're mostly in their communities where they live, and they're in the places where they work. And there they have a real group of people around them who in most cases they know and hopefully trust, and so on and so forth. And what I'm trying to say is, what if we got people in those places taking the kind of actions that government ought to be taking but just isn't? And of course, this is not to say, oh, let's forget about government totally, it's a lost cause. Not at all. Politics matters, government matters, absolutely. It would be then about kind of, among other things, shaming government into taking the right kind of action. And one of the crucial things that businesses need to do is they need to change what they lobby for. Mostly now, most businesses still lobby for, loopholes and regulatory exemptions and so on. We need them to be lobbying for a higher level playing field that cuts out the climate and green bad guys. And that's one of the crucial ways that they can make a difference. How do we get to that point? you say we get to that point through changing things, through civil resistance and this kind of flip, maybe. But I think that also probably we get to that point through trying to catalyze them directly and to working on them through their employees, through people who are climate aware in those workplaces, etc. To get to the point where, for example, we get people in workplaces saying, unless you do this, we're going to start doing half-hour work stoppages. And that kind of thing happening in specific industries and in specific institutions. Maybe eventually it might happen as a sort of, potential climate general strike. But I think that's the kind of thing that has to be built up to. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not going to be, I don't think, a sudden flip towards that.
Yeah, well, I do.
Interesting.
So, and I say, I'm saying that not from a normative or ideological point of view. I'm saying it from an analytical point of view that the thing's too far gone. Thing's too far gone for this change to happen. With any, the only way it's going to happen is through massive disruption on lots of different levels. And I mean, let me be a bit nuanced about it. It's not like one morning everything's the same, there's civil resistance, and the next morning everything changes. No, that's ridiculous, right? What I'm talking about is a series of fundamental breaks, economically, politically, spiritually, with the old regime, right? So it's more like the fall of the Roman Empire. It's like, but in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
It's like
the Roman Empire took a very long time.
Exactly. But what we know from the Roman Empire was, things were pretty, things looked pretty okay, like on the surface, and then there was a massive collapse, and then they pulled it all back together again, and then there was another massive collapse, right? And it's a bit like a stock market collapse, There's there's several cliff faces. So there will be like counter movements, obviously by the fascist right and all the rest of it. This isn't going to be you wake up in the morning and everyone's being nice, right? We're looking, maybe you are looking, but it's going to come with cliff faces because of this herding mechanism, and this history is full of these episodes. The reason why probably a lot of people watching us don't believe me, as it were, because we've had our cultural experiences, everything's trundling along, It's trundling along. But the fact of the matter is, the last 30 years have been a unique period in European history, in world history. There's been no massive confrontations in a classical sense, right? I mean, there's been loads of injustice
but what
and
about
change.
where is this line, you see? This is what I don't see. So John Michael Greer, for example, argues, collapses normally do take a long time. What's going to be this thing that prompts this kind of once and for all kind of herding shift? You and I agree, our civilization cannot go on as it is. It is going to be transformed. I think that the transformation is going to happen quite a lot more quickly than Greer thinks. But I'm sceptical that it's going to happen quite as quickly as you think.
Because of social repression. That's the theory, right? So that's why we have to have this Freudian-esque analysis, right? You're in the therapy session, the guy's going, no, everything's fine, I'm fine. On session 7, he collapses into a heap of tears, right? Why is that? Because the social repression is building up. And,
But isn't this happening sort of sequentially? That's what I was saying. If some people wake up, COP26 fails, a bunch more people wake up,
no, it's not sequential. It's all at once. It's all at once. I mean, not all at once in some absolutist sense, right? In other words, like with Insulate Britain, right? Look upon this as a social repression analysis, right? In Insulate Britain, let's say, for the sake of argument, there were 10 million conversations in the UK about Insulate Britain, right? I mean, 3 in 4 people knew about it. Those conversations, let's say for the sake of argument, were 90% negative. It's like, what the hell are they doing? They're blocking motorways. We've got a right to get to work. Everything's fine. Who are these people? They're hippies, blah, 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 right? From a Freudian point of view, that's a stage in this flipping process that at some point, and it's extremely difficult to predict from a complexity point of view, we know it's coming, but we don't know when. Although the fact that there was 90% of people actually animated about it is a predictor that at some point, 50, 60% of them will change in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't see it. I do not see it. I mean, let's look at Extinction Rebellion. I think that most of what Extinction Rebellion has done has been really good. I think some of it, especially a lot of what we did in the April 2019 rebellion, has been brilliant. I think that Extinction Rebellion was fatally wounded by what happened at Canning Town. I think Extinction Rebellion has never recovered from that, and I'm not sure it ever will. And maybe Extinction Rebellion will really recover from that in 2 or 3 years' time. That there'll be moments in the 2020s when things are so fucking awful, and there'll be climate disasters and so forth, and food shortages probably that are so terrible that there'll be a lot more people waking up. Maybe XR will be able to be the thing that kind of says at that moment, hey, look, we're still here, and we've been proved. If only you'd kind of come to us 5 years ago. That's totally possible. And again, that's the kind of thing I hope will happen. But I think it's really clear, objectively clear, and I think you have to learn from these mistakes, that Canning Town really set Extinction Rebellion back. Now, I'm a bit worried that you could sort of turn any of these kinds of negatives into a positive. You could say, well, lots of people spoke about Canning Town, therefore, in the end, it's kind of okay. I don't see that. And
that's the problem, is we agree on the empirics, but we don't agree on the interpretation of the empirics. That's the problem with different paradigms of interpretation. You see what I mean? If you have a surface rational way of looking at it, and I'm not saying it's absolute, I'm not saying that analysis is.
But there's a risk that your approach is sort of unfalsifiable, isn't there? There's a risk that
you
say, the worse it gets, the better it gets.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, I'm all into criticism, right? As you know, right?
Yeah.
I like to look at the numbers. I go into work every day, as it were, and I'm looking at the mobilisation numbers, and I'm working about the microdynamics of how to mobilise people and all the rest of it. So I'm not denigrating that, but we have to accept the fact there's a fundamental difference of analysis here, right? And there's good empirical evidence for both, as you might say, but we don't know, because I can't prove to you, because I can't get into those people's heads.
Yeah.
But just because I can't get into those people's heads doesn't mean that I'm wrong. I can't prove it. It's unprovable.
Yeah.
But I can. Let me give you another example, right? Black Lives Matter started, I think it was around 2012, right?
Yeah.
And there was a big, upsurgence of it, and then nothing. It went several years.
Absolutely.
Do you remember when it was like, oh, Black Lives Matter? That was those people, and what's happened to them? I haven't seen very much. And then the guy was shot in whenever it was in America. Why was that?
Absolutely.
Because of social repression amongst young people and amongst people of colour. It was like, that's the line. And suddenly you've got 10,000 arrests in the USA, and in 3 or 4 weeks, you've got state legislatives going, okay, what do you want?
Totally agree, and that's the kind of thing I had in mind with XR. There could be a moment like that where XR sort of really comes back, and XR actually gets millions. I think that could happen in a couple of years' time or something. But I also think that we need to understand that XR could have put itself in a better position to be ready for that moment if it hadn't alienated so many people by, for example, doing Canning Town. As I say, my concern about your approach is that it can look as though anything that you do that gets publicity or gets people talking is good, and however bad your public image, it's good.
No, I'm not saying that, just for the record.
Right, good.
I'm saying it's problematic, right?
Yeah.
Causing disruption is problematic, and it's probabilistic, right, in whether it's going to be effective or not. It's not like, do this and it will cause that, right? You don't know. But there's absolutely a point of where you're going too far, particularly when you're denigrating people, like verbally, and obviously when you start moving into, violence or and what have you. So, without sounding too sort of reductive about it, it's like 8 out of 10, right? It's 1 out of 10 is vaguely concerned. 4 out of 10 is go on a march. 8 out of 10 is 10 weeks of 3,000 people causing civil resistance. 9 out of 10 is blowing up pipelines, and 10 out of 10 is shooting the Prime Minister, right? You see what I mean? Like, it very rapidly collapses. There's a cliff edge. In my analysis, there's a cliff edge where if you go over that cliff edge, then you're basically into civil war.
Yes.
Right? That's not what I'm interested in.
No, absolutely.
What I'm interested in is the mainstay of classical non-violence as originated through Gandhi and Martin Luther King, which creates a probabilistic analysis that you could be successful. And my final point on this, because I think we should move on, is it's not that this is a guarantee. This is the important thing. Many of your criticisms have a validity, but that's not the point. The point is this methodology has a far higher level of probability of creating a change in the next 3 years than what you call a moderate frank. Yeah. But let me just finish by saying, there is some common ground because we both acknowledged it's a sociological inevitability that there is a moderate frank flank, right?
Yes.
It's there, but that doesn't mean, my argument is that doesn't mean you normatively support it. So as a pragmatic common ground, as it were, I think what both of us should be saying, or what I think you should be saying, is civil resistance is what we morally and strategically are called to do at this point in history, right? And I know that not all of you are going to do it, but this is what we're morally and strategically obliged to do as parents, as adults, as human beings, right?
Interesting.
And if you're not doing it, then obviously you're going to be creating these other organisations, then so be it. And then you're right that those other organisations shouldn't be engaged in some reductive 1950s male rationalist sort of discourse. They should be creating, as we both agree, they should be creating spaces for emotional communication and small-scale direct actions. That's all well and good. And the last thing I say is we would Just Stop Oil. I think what's interesting with Just Stop Oil is potentially we are making alliances with the moderate flank in so much as we're saying we're going for this, right? Inevitably, not all of you are going to follow us. You should normatively, but sociologically you're not. But that doesn't mean we're going to not work with you. What we want is the lawyers to come in. They should be in the road, but they're not. But what they can do and what they will do is potentially make a public statement saying British constitutional, culture does not involve arresting and putting into prison people who are trying to save their children's lives. That's a complete contradiction of British political tradition, British culture, and all the rest of it, which we all know. So maybe that's,
This
sort
is
of
nice because
confusion.
it seems to me we're getting quite close to each other now, which is always good. I'm saying we need the 8 out of 10 and we need the 7 out of 10, which is my new just behind the radical flank, moderate flank. And like with regard to Just Stop Oil, for example, I'll probably be asked to comment on it, and I will say things like, look, these people are doing the kind of thing that is necessary if we're going to make the kind of changes we need to in the kind of time that we're going to make. If you are going to be in a position to criticize them, you need to be actually doing something that is at least as good, if not better. Now, what is that thing? And then I'll talk about what some of the other things are that people can and should be doing through the law, through their businesses, etc., etc. And in terms of, obviously, you and I have both been engaging in civil resistance. And when I do have these conversations with people, I often try to persuade someone who is already, for example, someone who's run a big NGO or something. I say it would be really powerful if you would go and do some nonviolent direct action. And if you were thereby kind of saying, actually, you know what? Friends of the Earth and the Green Party, they're great, but they are not enough. We have to be going further than that. For me, what it's really about, it's about taking everybody to the edge of their comfort zone and then one step beyond, so far as that one step beyond stays the doing of something which is strategic and strategically intelligent. And so with some people, it's about getting them to the point of voting green. For other people, it's about getting them to the point of taking action in their workplace, or maybe even threatening to withhold their labour. For other people, it's about will you come and block this oil refinery? And if we're moving as large a numbers as we can, as it were, sort of up this beautiful treadmill, then we're maybe working together in such a way that we create this ecosystem of the movement, or of the movement of movements, which can actually function well.
Yeah, I think we're half agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
But I quite like that summary that, you know, I like to concretize things. When you're talking, there's a big difference between going to a moderate flank space and saying, you're the moderate flank, you know, that's the sociological reality. And therefore that's okay, and carry on. That's what I don't want. What I think our middle ground is you're going to the moderate flank space and saying, you're the moderate flank, that's the sociological reality. And we have the agency, and you have the agency, and you have the moral responsibility to step up. Right? I'm challenging you.
Yeah.
In other words, you're not coming across as making the reality a normative proposition.
And don't make them just kind of feel good. People need to be continually being brought out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant process. We all know that. I mean, we all interrogate ourselves all the time. So it's but welcome to real life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like this. It's not, you know, it's not the party's over.